And circling back to our top story, foreign policy watchers have described how Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong's soft power approach has given Singapore a seat at the table. And this is helping the country to not just survive, but to thrive. CNA's Dawn Tan takes a closer look at how Mr. Lee upheld Singapore's long-held focus on being a friend to all and enemy to none.
20 years and thousands of travel hours. Before the pandemic, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong's official work trips averaged 12 to 14 every year to strengthen old friendships and tread new ground. Testament to the global respect he garnered, a regular seat at the table during G20 meetings, despite Singapore not being an official member. But foreign policy for Mr. Lee has been much more than just pleasantries.
Lee Hsien Loong, Prime Minister of Singapore.
Behind the smiles and handshakes, the business of furthering the country's interests. Defending a small country in a big world has seen Mr. Lee building on the tradition of Singapore's small state survival.
We didn't set out to do this, but we have developed soft power. And Singapore, by creating a good model of governance, of a cohesive society, economic dynamism, intercultural harmony, has become a good model. And that is where Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong has brought Singapore.
Under Mr. Lee, Singapore's soft power was in full flow on the world stage more than once, facilitating historic landmark moments on home soil.
The Trump-Kim summit, as well as the Maing-Chiu-Xi Jinping meeting, those really highlighted the role of Singapore as a trusted actor for some of these players to choose to come to Singapore and have some of these difficult conversations. PM Lee, over the last 20 years, have given Singapore that voice and to show that, well, in our own small way, we are able to contribute, despite our size, to big issues of international affairs.
Will I come to London? Surely I'll come.
That message was forged long ago as Singapore gained independence. Founding leader Lee Kuan Yew's thinking on the hard truths of Singapore shaped the country's international relations. But Lee Hsien Loong's foreign policy achievements in a changing world are all his own.
The environment certainly became much more complicated on his watch. You had, first of all, the global financial crisis, which in many ways is not over. You had heightened US-China strategic competition. You had a much more assertive China in the South China Sea, East China Sea over Taiwan. You had a much more polarized America and terrorism in Southeast Asia. And given all these challenges, I think he kept Singapore on a stable course, kept Singapore attractive as an investment destination, as an economic partner, and as a political partner.
Navigating a stable course has also seen Mr. Lee balancing relationships with major powers. And while the legacy of his leadership is broad-ranging, it may well be his handling of China-US relations that stands out.
And he's been objective and fair in both. What he has done very well, because he is so articulate, he speaks with a clarity, is to point out, to diagnose a situation, put his finger on the situation, and then recommend a solution.
Building and preserving trust have also been the cornerstone of PM Lee's approach to regional ties. Towards that end, he's remained a consistent voice on the value of ASEAN cohesion in the face of regional challenges.
You cannot ignore the value of ASEAN. You cannot sort of just exclude ASEAN from the discussion. And I think PM Lee, and as well as many Singapore leaders, are very aware of that, and we try as much as possible to bring in that ASEAN voice, as opposed to saying, let's ignore ASEAN because of all these problems and let's do whatever it takes for our own country. In fact, if ASEAN prospers, to a large extent, Singapore prospers.
The goal of that shared prosperity in the region has been a key arrow of PM Lee's approach to foreign policy. And under his watch, progress between Singapore and its closest neighbours accelerated. Over decades-long infrastructure ideas to foster closer ties with immediate neighbour Malaysia. And culminating in a final overseas trip as Prime Minister to Indonesia to meet President Joko Widodo, with his successor in attendance. Deals signed resolved some long-standing issues between friends, even as the leaders' retreat became symbolic of the passing of the guard for both countries.
As Singapore transitions to new leadership, the world will be watching closely to see how the country continues to navigate the complex currents of global politics. But one thing is certain, Lee Hsien Loong's imprint, his rational voice in an often less rational world, will endure for years to come. Dawn Tan, CNA.